This is a brief overview of the Teac X7 3-motor, 3-head, reel-to-reel, encompassing any size, going all the way up to 7-inch, so that's 3, 5, and 7-inch reels accordingly. This is a unidirectional reel-to-reel exclusively. Record, play one side, and flip the reels and play the other tracks. Tracks 1 and 3, side A, tracks 2 and 4 for side B. This is a DC motor driven reel-to-reel that includes the reel hub motors, all DC, frequency generated, and as well as the capstan motor. This is a dual capstan layout. It's a single capstan motor with 2 complementary flywheels to drive each of the capstan stations and pinch roller stations. You'll note that the reel-to-reel does encompass the utilization of 2 pinch rollers and 2 capstans for superior tape-to-head contact interface, and also some reduced scrape flutter and so on. The reel-to-reel has a number of various different capabilities. We'll start with the basics first. Going from left to right, pretty self-explanatory. You're going to see the power switch, the blue square right there. To the left, or actually to the right of that, excuse me, will be the speed control. That'll be 7.5 inches and 3 3/4 inches, 19 centimeters a second, 9.5 centimeters respectively for our metric friends. Headphone socket out to the right of that, as well as your microphone left and right inputs. This reel-to-reel does accommodate both line and mic mixing capabilities. To the right of that, you're going to see the record arm switch. It's called record mode, on and off, to eliminate accidental recording unintentionally. So if you do strike the record button by accident and this button isn't armed first, the machine will not go into record. Next, you'll see the 2-step bias controls. Okay, that is going to accommodate 2 different types of tape. Say, for example, if you like to use a Scotch 207 or perhaps an XL UD 3590 7-inch tapes, you can actually have your machine optimized for both of those. You really should, by the way, have the machines aligned to the types of tapes you like to use. Excuse me. Your equalization switch to the right, both conforming to the 3120 microsecond NAB standard, okay, not IEC, so that's rather important. Your tape monitor switch just to the right there to afford confidence monitoring for both ensuring that you're getting signal input as well as the fact that you are laying information directly onto tape. Okay. To the right of that, you'll see the dual ganged mic control for controlling left and right balance as well as overall level. To the right of that is the line level input. Do note this is all -10 dBV or dBu. Consumer electronics that only offers unbalanced single RCA phono input, does not provide provisions for XLR balance. This is a consumer machine, not a professional machine. Please consult our friends at Tascam if such a need for that is for you. You'll note then after that a single output potentiometer, pot if some people call it, with a cow mark, so that way you're able to set all your unity settings. Typically speaking, I think it's a little bit optimistic for what it is. I notice I have to go a little bit further than that to get the levels I want, but that could be just the equipment I have as far as its input sensitivity and resistance. So overall, controls are pretty straightforward, easy to get to. We're going to move up to the VU meters, next level up, left and right. They are calibrated, they are volume units, so it's an averaging, it's not peak. Okay, so it behaves very much like your human hearing does. You'll note the logarithmic scale from -20 all the way to +3 graduated. The pitch control for increasing and decreasing the speed to various different custom applications. And then you'll note the mode controls just to the right of that. All soft touch, solenoid actuated, controls full logic, full TTL. So rewind, stop, play, fast forward, pause, record mute for putting a space or a gap between your recordings there. Makes editing a little bit nicer and easier too, a welcome feature. Last but not least, the one that does the deed, the record button. Okay. reel to reel itself is not very overly heavy. If it's more than, say, 35 pounds, it might be. I'd be surprised, actually, in direct comparison to a lot of the Teac machines of yesteryear beyond this. By the way, this is 1981. It's fairly light, it's fairly compact. Okay, it can lie on its back as well as be stood up here vertically, as you see here in the video. So your flavor, this machine will easily accommodate it. If you'd like to get some 19-inch EIA rack mount ears or create your own, you can put this in its own reel-to-reel trolley or truck, if you will, and wheel it around your project studio or your listening room at will. Let's talk a little bit about the dual capstan 3-motor transport system here. To the very left, as we go up above the VU meter, you'll see one of the tension idlers right there. They're on very low friction, oil-like bearing, stainless steel shaft, kind of motif there, aluminum face type rollers. You'll notice the buffer idler directly to the right of that. Okay, helps reduce scrape flutter. Then we get to the first capstan and the first pinch roller station prior to the erase head and the guides. Okay. Then we go to the erase head, then we go to the record head, and then last the play or reproduce head, as some of the professionals will call it. And then we go to the second capstan and the pinch roller station right there. And then to the right of that, we repeat the buffer idler again to reduce scrape flutter and modulation noise. And then we get to the second tension arm, which will bring our tape right to our take-up reel. Okay. Above that, we're going to note our tape counter. I call this the ambiguous number of revolutions. It will not count time. This is a purely mechanical device. It does utilize both a reset kind of clock method as well as an incremental, like I said, reel count. To the right of that is going to be a timer control, and that timer control for the most part is either for playback. Well, I suppose if you arm your record switch, it will start recording. Never quite frankly found an application for this switch, so it mostly stays off for me. But for those that may need a remote record situation or playback, this is a grand feature. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about some of the kind of things to be aware of and careful about the Teac X7. This goes for the Teac X10, by the way. As well as any of the other machines that utilize the same DC motors. The first one would be what's referred to as tired wind mode. Okay, basically the motors become contaminated inside. Both bearings and the shaft become contaminated, both slowing down your wind times, that'd be rewind, as well as fast forward. If it gets debilitating enough, it'll actually stop the transport altogether. Since this is tension sensed, if the reels are not spinning at the proper rotation, this machine will detect that and will stop us immediately. Okay. Other things to pay attention to would be the tape lift mechanism. If the machine's been stored for a very long time, the tape lift mechanism could bind and stick, especially with the old paraffin-based wax-like lubricants they were using in Japan when they made this. Yes, this is made in Japan. Last of the exclusively made in Japan electronics, unlike China, Singapore, Malaysia, and so on. You'll also note that Teacs have rather soft heads. They utilize what they refer to as a pearl alloy with a ferrite core. So their heads are fairly soft. So proper adjustments, proper maintenance is key and vital to keeping your heads lasting as long as they possibly can. I believe Teac still supports the replacement parts on this machine, but not as much as they used to. This machine, again, was made back in 1981. So you're definitely going to be seeing a lot of, how can we say, concerns later on as time goes on. But your conventional, discrete electronics such as capacitors, resistors, transistors, and so on, heck, maybe even a timer IC if that's inside there, is readily available from your favorite vendors, DigiKey, and so on. Okay, so servicing it is actually not as hard as you would think. It's actually fairly easy. The toughest thing would probably be to attain the motors and to attain the head block, or actually the head, or heads, depending upon what the wear item is. So doing your proper maintenance and ensuring as you restore this unit that proper back tension, take-up tension, as well as deck height, all these kinds of things are done and also a good interface between the capstan shaft as well as the pinch station. It's absolutely vital. That also the machine tracks straight and true is also vital too. Any kind of azimuth error will drastically change the sound of this machine, especially in the high frequency areas. So basically, overall, I am not going to kid anyone. I'm a little bit of a Teac fanboy. I have been since day one. I bought my very first Teac. That was a 4300, not an S, not an SX. It was just a 4300. And I absolutely fell in love with it. It used all AC inductor motors with those sintered bronze sleeves, and you had to be very careful with those as well. This does use sintered bronze sleeves as well on the buffer idlers as well as the tension idlers, so you have to be mindful of that. The pinch rollers also use that same bronze sintered supposedly oil light bearing, even though Teac tells you to lubricate them anyway. So light machine oil, 3-in-1 oil, or what have you. Heck, I've even in a pinch used Marvel. It doesn't hurt it. Okay, and Marvel kind of smells good, but to each his own. Basically, solid machines, very easy to work on. They don't really give you a lot of grief. I think out of everybody, Teac and Tascam, which is really basically the same company. Tascam, of course, being the professional arm of Teac. That's Teac of America Systems of America, okay, and then Teac, that'd be Tokyo Electro-Acoustic Corporation. So Teac stands for. Found all the way back in the wee days, even before I was born. I know it's hard to believe. By the Tanny brothers, and they had actually created a very first kit, and basically went from there. I believe they may have been mono machines. There's a great history of Teac on one of the vintage audio sites or vintage analog sites. I believe the outfit's somewhere down there in Texas. But a great resource to visit. Hi-Fi Engine is another great place to visit for all the owner's manuals. If you're lucky, sometimes you get the promotional videos, not videos, but you'll get the brochures. I'm getting ahead of myself there. And you'll also are able to get that particular point parts list, schematics, and all that. Fortunately, when I purchased this unit, I was able to get all the documentation that went with. So overall, I have to say I really like this machine. It really does a lot of great service for me. I use it very conservatively because tape is a rather difficult thing to get a hold of these days. So keeping that in mind, be wary of wanting to have one of these. Do know that support is going to be on the little difficult side. As anything, it's like vintage. Is your consumables, your spare support, your documentation, expertise for fixing these. I'm again not going to kid you. These people have retired or since passed away. So finding people who understand these machines is getting harder and harder as time goes on. So that being said, is a reel-to-reel for everybody? As a final thought, no, it's not. But for those who kind of want to go back and live the retro times, such as myself, or those who may be just initially curious for that analog reel-to-reel sound, I think the X7 is a fantastic machine to get started with. I think even a better machine, it's going to probably cost you a little bit less, would be the X3. I was very fortunate. I was able to get this one here for about $350 plus shipping. I couldn't be pleased. I had to do very little to it. The belts are all in great shape. The transport's in great shape. Head stack is absolutely beautiful. The guides show no signs of wear. That's again another weak spot of Teac. They use rather soft metal for their tape guides as well. So overall, it's kind of like going home again. I've had way too many Teac reel-to-reels, and if the Lord lets me, I might have a few more. Dream list, A7300, the 6300, the 6600. It just goes on and on and on of reel-to-reels I'd love to have, but the reality is, one, do I really want it, and do I really need it? And two, where am I going to put it? These things do eat up space. I'm not going to kid you. I've got this sitting on top of my MM400 microphone, or excuse me, not microphone, but headphone amplifier from the Mackey Corporation. Our friends up there in Washington State just built like a tank. Just absolutely love that as well. Do a review on that fairly soon. But overall, if you love vintage, you can't go wrong with the reel-to-reel. But just be mindful of the kind of support that you'll get, how difficult the tapes will be to get, because at the end of the day, tape is a very dirty business as far as creating it, manufacturing, and then ultimately selling it. It's going to be expensive, compared to SD recorder like I'm using here to record this with. SD cards, they're practically giving them away. They want you to get it out of their warehouse. Hey, you're taking up my space. 128 gig memory cards are way cheaper than one 7-inch bit of tape that's got maybe 1,200 feet of tape on it to about 1,800 feet. By the way, as you go longer in your tape length, you'll also go thinner in what referred to as the mills of the tape as well. So 1,800 feet is going to be just a little bit thinner. This guy's going to handle it just well. I no problems at all. If you're running 1,200 feet, 1,800 feet, you're not going to have any problems with this X7. It handles the tape very gently, and it's elegance, really, quite frankly. Is it going to be the same levels of, say, an MCI or an Atari, Ampex, ATR 102? No, it's not. Or even a Studer 810. But we have to remember what this was built for and who it's built for. So it's not meant for the studio. It's meant for the music lover, and maybe the little flunky musician and all of us. They do come in handy. After all, a lot of the very greats got their starts on Teac. This and the Porta Studio, along with the 3340. There's just absolutely an endless history of who's who and famous people. George Lucas, the Eagles, and so on have recorded on Teac as well as Tascam. You just can't really miss. They're just really fantastic machines. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I want to thank everyone for stopping by my little analog corner, if you will. I'm not beholden to analog, just so you know. It's just another way for me to enjoy my music and share it with everyone. Digital is mostly where I live. I won't kid anyone. I love digital because of all the efficiency, packaging, and the fact that it's just incredibly robust and it's incredibly inexpensive to do. So thank you again, and I wish you all well, and stay safe out there, and we'll bring in another one pretty soon. So thanks again, and we'll be seeing you.